The scent of old wood and dust was the same. It was the first thing that assaulted my senses as my consciousness slammed back into my body. A violent return to a moment I had prayed for 1,000 times in the silent agony of my previous death. I was standing in the parlor of my mother's house, the one my father and his new family had so quickly claimed as their own. The sunlight streamed through the bay window, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air like forgotten spirits. My stepmother, Clara, was fussing with a doily, her voice a simpering drone. "Now, Elara, remember your manners. Colonel Croft is a war hero. This is a tremendous honor for our family." My father, Alistair Vance, stood stiffly by the fireplace, his face a mask of nervous anticipation. And then there was Lila, my stepsister, who was currently performing a masterclass in manufactured hysterics. She was clutching a handkerchief to her eyes, her shoulders shaking with sobs that were a little too perfectly timed. "I can't bear it," she wailed. "To think of him so brave, so broken. And with our family's history, it's a miracle he's even considering us." This was the script. I knew every line, every gesture. In my first life, this performance had filled me with a sense of guilt and obligation. Lila's tears, my father's pointed remarks about our capitalist taint, and the unspoken threat of being shipped off for re-education in some distant village had cornered me. I had seen Colonel Marcus Croft's proposal as a lifeline, a way to protect what was left of my family's name and stay in the city. What a fool I had been. In that other, terrible timeline I had said yes. I had married the handsome, gravely injured colonel. And from that day forward, my health had begun a slow, inexplicable decline. A lingering weakness in my limbs, a constant gnawing pain in my bones, until the day I woke up and my legs would no longer obey me. All the while Marcus, who had arrived at our door in a wheelchair, grew stronger. He began to walk, his pallor improved, his scars seemed to fade. I was the sponge soaking up his suffering. When I finally confronted him, his mask of genteel kindness had slipped, revealing a core of pure contempt. "The one who saved me that night was Lila," he had sneered, his eyes cold. "You have some nerve, snatching your sister's savior just for the title of an officer's wife. Do you know she's threatening to throw herself into the river over this?" He had me locked in a room, cut off from food and water. And then the final grotesque act of the play. Marcus, in a dramatic display of heroism, had fallen from a 10th-story balcony while saving Lila. They said his brains spilled onto the pavement and yet he lived. I, however, locked in my prison, felt my own skull rupture from the inside. I died alone, in agony, my death certificate citing a sudden cerebral hemorrhage. A week after my quiet funeral, Marcus Croft was miraculously recovered and married Lila. The memory was a shard of ice in my veins. "Elara." My father's voice cut through my reverie. "Did you hear me? Colonel Croft will be here any moment. This is your chance. Don't ruin it with your aloofness." I looked at him, truly looked at him. The man who had married my mother for her money and her house, and who had replaced her with Clara a mere 3 months after her sudden illness. The man who was now so eager to sell one of his daughters for a sliver of social protection. Lila let out another theatrical sob. Oh, if only Mother hadn't married into this family. Elara would have been sent to the countryside long ago. We're all tainted by her. That was my cue. In my first life I had stayed silent, shamed into submission. This time I cleared my throat, my voice cutting through her performance with a calm I did not feel. "Then it's settled," I said. Everyone froze. Clara stopped fussing. Lila's sobs hiccuped to a halt. My father stared at me, his brow furrowed. "What's settled?" he asked. "I won't marry him," I said, the words feeling like a sacred vow. If Lila is so concerned about the family's reputation and so connected to the colonel, having attended those literacy classes at his unit, then she should be the one to accept his proposal. It's only right. The silence in the room was absolute, broken only by the ticking of the grandfather clock. Lila's face, previously streaked with fake tears, was now a comical mask of shock and dawning avaricious hope. My father's expression shifted from confusion to calculation, and then to a sharp, assessing look directed at me. "Elara, don't be foolish," he began, but I cut him off. "It's not foolishness, father. It's clarity. I have no connection to Colonel Croft. It seems Lila does. Let her have this tremendous blessing. I want no part of it." Before anyone could formulate a response, A firm knock echoed from the front door. Colonel Marcus Croft had arrived. The man who entered was every bit the image of the tragic hero. He was in a wheelchair, pushed by a young aide, his uniform impeccably pressed despite the clear evidence of his injuries. His face was handsome though pale, and his eyes swept the room and for a fleeting second landed on me. There was a spark in them, something that looked like recognition and confirmation, before his gaze shifted to Lila, softening into a semblance of warmth. The formalities were exchanged. My father, ever the opportunist, quickly steered the conversation. Colonel Croft, we are deeply honored by your visit. My daughter Lila has spoken of nothing else. Marcus's lips curved into a faint smile. The honor is mine, Mr. Vance. His voice was a low, resonant baritone, the kind that could command battalions or whisper poisonous lies. He turned his attention fully to Lila. Miss Lila, it is good to see you again. Lila blushed, ducking her head. And you, Colonel. He then looked at my father, his expression turning serious. Sir, I have come with a proposal of marriage. My circumstances are, well, you can see them. But I can offer protection and a stable home. I wish to marry your daughter. The air left the room. My father puffed out his chest, ready to seal my fate. But I held my breath, waiting. Of course, Colonel, my father boomed. We would be delighted. Our Alara is. Actually, father, I interjected, my voice clear and steady. All eyes swiveled to me. Marcus's gaze was particularly intense, a flicker of confusion in its depths. I believe the Colonel's intention might be misunderstood. Given his previous acquaintance, it seems he intends to marry Lila. A strange tension filled the space between Marcus and myself. It was as if we were the only two people in the room engaged in a silent, deadly duel. He had come for me. I knew it with every fiber of my being. He needed me for his vile transfer. Why, I didn't yet know, but the certainty was absolute. Lila looked between us, her hope warring with suspicion. My father, flustered, tried to regain control. Nonsense, Alara. The Colonel is a man of his word. He came for you. It was then that Marcus did something unexpected. He broke eye contact with me and looked at Lila, offering her a slow, deliberate smile. Mr. Vance, your daughter Alara is perceptive. But perhaps she is correct. My interactions with Miss Lila have been memorable. If she would have me, it is she I wish to marry. The room erupted. Lila's face flushed with triumphant joy. Clara clapped her hands together. My father, after a moment of stunned silence, began beaming. The matter settled to his satisfaction. But I saw it. The slight tightening around Marcus's eyes as he looked back at me. It wasn't acquiescence. It was a strategic retreat. The game was not over. It had just changed. And then my father, in his infinite wisdom, decided to secure his own position. Colonel, this is wonderful news. And since Lila will be taken care of, we must think of Alara. She is quick and diligent, you know. Not getting any younger, and no work unit will take her with her background. Why not let her work as your housemaid? She can take care of Lila and your household. Once you're used to her, she'll be very handy. The audacity of it stole my breath. In my first life, I had been his pawn for marriage. In this one, I was to be a domestic slave, kept close for reasons I was only beginning to fathom. No, I said, the word final and sharp. I am not going. Alara, with your class status, my father began, his voice taking on a threatening tone. What is shameful about going to the countryside? I shot back, a plan solidifying in my mind. I've already applied. I'm leaving for the Northwest next month. The shock in the room was palpable. The pampered daughter of a capitalist family, who had never held a broom, volunteering for hard labor 1,000 miles away? It was unthinkable. The Northwest. Lila gasped, her joy making her generous. But it's a wasteland. I've made up my mind, I said, meeting Marcus's gaze squarely. Lila, I wish you and Colonel Croft every happiness. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a low purr that set my teeth on edge. It is a good thing to have the heart to contribute to the country. If you ever need anything, Miss Alara, just tell me directly. I misunderstood you before. From now on, you are my real sister. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Then Lila, swept up in the moment, stepped forward. Oh, Alara. Thank you, she gushed. She took off a simple red string bracelet from her wrist. A token of our sisterly bond. She tied it onto my wrist, her fingers lingering for a moment too long. My father and Clara praised the depth of our affection. As they all urged Marcus to stay for dinner, celebrating the new engagement, I looked down at the red string. It felt cold against my skin. A token of bond or a chain. I had avoided the marriage, but I was still trapped in their web. The first battle was won, but the war for my life was just beginning. I had 1 month to unravel their secrets before I left, or my fate would be sealed no matter how far I ran. The celebration dinner was a farcical display of familial bliss that churned my stomach. I sat at the table, a ghost at my own funeral, pushing food around my plate while Lila and my father showered Marcus with attention. Clara preened, her daughter having bagged the most eligible invalid in the city. I was the afterthought, the inconvenient daughter with the newly discovered patriotic streak. My mind was a whirlwind. The red string on my wrist felt like a brand. In my first life, Lila had given me a similar bracelet shortly after my engagement to Marcus. I had worn it until the day I died. Was this the medium for the transfer? It seemed too simple, too mundane for such a dark magic. But it was the only tangible connection between us. I watched them like a hawk looking for a crack in their facade. Lila, her face flushed with wine and victory, poured tea for Marcus. Her hands, usually so steady, trembled slightly, a calculated gesture of demure nervousness, I was sure. The scalding liquid sloshed over the rim of the cup, splashing onto the back of Marcus's hand. The skin reddened and swelled instantly. A nasty burn. "I'm so sorry. Oh, Marcus, forgive me," Lila cried, her eyes wide with feigned distress. Marcus simply smiled, a gentle, forgiving curve of his lips. "It's nothing, my dear. Don't trouble yourself." He flexed his hand and I stared, unblinking, at the injured flesh. His expression remained placid, utterly devoid of pain. It was as if the nerves in his hand had been severed. And then it hit me. A searing, white-hot agony erupted on the back of my own right hand. It was so sudden, so violent, that a sharp cry was torn from my throat. My vision swam as tears of pure, physiological response sprang to my eyes. It felt as if my hand had been plunged into boiling oil. The pain was identical to what a severe burn should feel like. My body swayed involuntarily, the chair legs scraping against the floor as I stumbled. I fell sideways right into Marcus's path. His arms, strong and sure despite his supposed injuries, shot out and caught me. For a single, horrifying second I was pressed against him. I could smell the starch of his uniform and something else underneath, a cold, metallic scent that reminded me of a grave. His eyes looked down into mine, and in their depths I saw not concern, but a flicker of intense, predatory satisfaction. I wrenched myself away from his grasp, staggering back. My right hand was throbbing, the pain a living thing. "Alara, what is the meaning of this?" my father snapped, his jovial mood shattered. "She spilled it on Marcus. What is she screaming for?" Lila hissed, her mask of sweetness slipping to reveal pure venom. "He already said he's going to marry me, and here you are, faking pain and throwing yourself at him. Shameless." I couldn't form words. I could only shake my hand rapidly, the cool air of the room doing nothing to quell the inferno on my skin. "Don't argue," Clara cut in smoothly, ever the peacemaker. "You must have seen it, Alistair. The water was boiling. It was an accident." Yes, my father chimed in, eager to defuse the situation. "Your sister didn't mean it." And the Colonel's reaction was instinctive. It was unintentional. They were smoothing things over, a united front protecting their golden future. They didn't care about my pain. They didn't even seem to truly see it. Marcus finally spoke, his voice a low murmur. "Are you quite all right, Miss Alara? You look unwell." His tone was laced with a subtle mockery that only I could detect. The pain was already beginning to recede, fading to a deep, throbbing ache. I looked from his calm, unburned hand to my own, which was now showing faint red marks, mirroring the exact placement of his splash wound. The truth was a cold, hard stone in my gut. The transfer was real. And it was already active. He wasn't married to me, he was engaged to Lila, and yet I was the one bearing his pain. But what was the connection? Marcus had lost all interest in the meal. He exchanged a few quiet words with my father and took his leave, his wheelchair gliding silently out of the room. The look he gave me before he left was not one of anger or confusion, but of calculation. I was a variable in his equation that had behaved unexpectedly, and he was recalibrating. The moment he was gone, my father turned on me, his face dark with fury. What was that performance? Do you have any idea what you could have ruined? It wasn't a performance, I said, my voice trembling with residual pain and rage. I held up my hand, the red mark still visible. I felt it. I felt his burn. He scoffed. Don't be absurd. You're hysterical. If you regret your decision, just say so. I can still find you a decent match. Perhaps not as grand as the Colonel, but you wouldn't want for anything. I looked at this man, my father, who was so eager to be rid of me. In my first life after my marriage, he had ransacked my mother's house looking for her hidden fortune. He had sold me for social protection and then scavenged what was left of my inheritance. He would not get a single coin this time. I have no regrets, I said coldly. My mind is made up. I retreated to my room, my mind racing. The pain transfer was one way. He could injure himself or be injured and I would bear the consequence. Distance seemed irrelevant so far. But how was it triggered? The red string was the obvious link, but was it the only one? The next morning I set my plan in motion. I would go to the Youth League office and finalize my assignment, moving my departure date up if possible. I needed to get away from this house, from this city, from them. As I walked through the bustling streets, I had the distinct feeling of being followed. A glance in a shop window confirmed it. Lila was tailing me, trying to look nonchalant. She only turned back when she saw me walk through the official doors of the Youth League office. The interior was drab, all gray concrete and bureaucratic efficiency. A clerk directed me to a small office. When I entered, the man behind the desk looked up and my breath caught in my throat. Zachary Evans. He had been a classmate during my brief, privileged time at a Swiss boarding school. A brilliant, quiet boy from a diplomatic family. After I was forced to return home, I'd heard his family had also fallen out of favor. It seemed he had landed here. Elara Vance, he said, his voice even, betraying no surprise. His eyes, however, held a glimmer of recognition. He looked over my file. This is a special application. You're listed as a special skills candidate. Are you certain about this? The Northwest project is final. You'll have to hide your identity. You may never be able to come back. In my first life, this same organization had approached me, intrigued by my multilingual skills and education. I had been too enamored with the idea of being an officer's wife, too scared of the unknown, and had refused. It was a decision I had come to regret in the dark, pain-filled hours of my first death. I am certain, I said without hesitation. He studied me for a long moment, his gaze piercing. All right. From today you are classified as special talent. All information before departure will be kept secret. If there is any issue, come directly to me. He slid a document across the desk for me to sign. A sense of profound relief washed over me. This was my escape. This was my path to a life that was truly my own. As I bent over the paper, pen in hand, a crippling, familiar agony exploded in my legs. It was the same weakness, the same bone-deep pain that had heralded my paralysis in my first life. The pen clattered to the floor. My legs gave way and I collapsed, my head spinning as the world dissolved into a vortex of pain. The last thing I saw was Zachary's alarmed face as he rushed around the desk. I awoke in a sterile white hospital room. Zachary was sitting in a chair beside the bed, his expression tense. Elara, we understand your desire to contribute, he said carefully, but if you have a hidden illness, the organization will have no choice but to reject your application. I lay there, the ghost of the pain still echoing in my limbs. Desperation clawed at me. I couldn't let this chance slip away. I needed an ally. Taking a deep breath, I decided to gamble everything. I don't have an illness, I whispered. I told him everything. The proposal, my death, the pain transfer, Marcus's recovery, my rebirth. I spoke in a low, frantic rush, watching his face for the inevitable disbelief, the dismissal. When I finished, his expression hadn't changed. He hadn't laughed, hadn't interrupted. Zachary, you don't believe me, I said, my hope deflating. I understand. It sounds insane. I believe you, he said, his voice quiet but firm. The 3 words were a balm to my shattered spirit. You do. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. You said he can affect you. Then Elara, the crucial question is, can you affect him? A shiver, equal parts terror and excitement, ran through me. In all my fear and planning, I had only thought of myself as a victim, a receptacle for his suffering. The idea of turning his own weapon against him had never occurred to me. It was a terrifying, intoxicating thought. Why hadn't I thought of that before? Zachary's question echoed in my mind, a revolutionary mantra. Can you affect him? The concept shifted the entire foundation of my reality. I was not just a passive target, I could be a weapon. I was discharged from the hospital with a clean bill of health, the mysterious paralysis having vanished as quickly as it came. The doctors were baffled. I knew the cause. Marcus was testing the limits of our connection, or perhaps Lila was growing impatient. That evening, as Zachary had predicted, Marcus was once again a guest at our dinner table. The engagement had made him a fixture in our house. I took my seat, my body thrumming with a new nervous energy. I had a plan, a small personal experiment. Earlier that day at the hospital, I had complained of a nagging pain in my jaw. A sympathetic dentist, finding nothing wrong, had nonetheless agreed to remove a perfectly healthy wisdom tooth on my right side. Sometimes they cause referred pain, he'd said with a shrug. Now the local anesthesia had worn off and a deep, throbbing ache had set in, a raw, familiar pain that was entirely my own. I stared hard at Marcus's face throughout the meal. He was the picture of contentment, laughing at one of my father's jokes, his gaze warm whenever it rested on Lila. He showed no sign of discomfort, no hint of a sympathetic ache in his jaw. He ate his food without hesitation. My heart sank. Was it only his pain that transferred? Not mine. Was the connection so cruelly one-sided? While I was lost in this disappointing thought, the conversation took a turn that snapped me back to the present. And that old rosewood chest in your room, Alara, Lila was saying, her voice sweet as poison. It would look perfect in the Colonel's study, don't you think? It would give the place a touch of class. The chest. It was one of the few pieces my mother had brought with her from her family home. It was mine. That chest belongs to me, I said, my voice flat. It was my mother's. You have no right to it. Lila pouted, clinging to my father's arm. But, Dad, if I marry into the military compound with nothing, people will laugh at me. I just want to take it so I have some face. She's going to the countryside anyway, she can't take it with her. We're all family. What's the harm? The gall of her, after a lifetime of reminding me we shared no blood, was staggering. Since when? I shot back, my temper flaring. Since when are we family? She's my stepsister. No blood relation at all. What right does she have to my mother's belongings? I looked directly at my father, my gaze unwavering. And to be blunt, this house was given to me by my mother. The rest of you are just living here temporarily. My father's face purpled. How dare you speak to me like that? This is my house. Is it? I challenged quietly. The deed is in my mother's name and I am her only heir. You know that. The unspoken truth hung in the air between us. Lila looked more like my father than I did, and she was only half a year my junior. His hasty marriage to Clara 3 months after my mother's death was a secret everyone knew but never spoke of. In the midst of this heated argument, 2 of the house staff, directed by Clara, maneuvered the heavy rosewood chest out of my room and down the stairs. As they passed the dining room, one of them lost their grip. The corner of the solid wood chest slammed directly into Marcus's shin, even though he was seated. The impact was sickening. I winced in anticipation of his cry of pain. It never came. Marcus's expression remained placid. He simply adjusted his position slightly. Careful there, he said to the flustered servant, his voice calm. At that exact moment, a blinding, sharp pain exploded in my own shin. It felt like the bone had been shattered. I gasped, my knee buckling, and I had to grip the table to stay upright. Lila, panicking at the near accident involving her prized fiancé, turned and seeing me swaying, gave me a hard, furious shove. Stop causing trouble. I tumbled down the 3 short steps leading from the dining area into the sunken living room. The impact knocked the wind from my lungs and sent fresh jolts of pain through my already bruised body. I lay there for a second, dazed, then gritted my teeth and looked up at Marcus. He was still in his chair, watching me quietly from the top of the steps. There was no concern in his eyes, only a cold, clinical observation. He hadn't felt a thing. Damn it, I thought, despair washing over me. It really is one way. Downstairs, the sound of laughter and cheerful voices resumed as if nothing had happened. My father, Clara, and Lila were toasting the future, their celebration a stark contrast to my pain and powerlessness on the floor. I dragged myself to my feet and retreated to my bedroom, my body a symphony of aches that belonged to Marcus. As I lay in the dark, wondering how to break this cursed connection, a new, more violent sickness gripped me. A churning, burning sensation erupted in my stomach. I barely made it to the wash basin before I vomited, the bitter bile streaked with shocking bright red blood. Sweat broke out all over my body. I hadn't eaten a thing at dinner. This was not my pain. This was something new. Downstairs, the laughter grew louder, punctuated by my father's boisterous voice. Colonel Croft sure can hold his liquor. 3 gin of baijiu already. And he just had a pound of yellow wine earlier. Incredible. It's nothing, Marcus's voice floated up, clear and steady. As long as the drinks keep coming, I'll keep drinking. The truth dawned on me with horrifying clarity. The burning in my stomach, the vomiting of blood. It was his. He was drinking himself into a stupor and my body was paying the price. If he kept going, he would poison himself and I would be the one to die from it. Trembling, weak and terrified, I rushed downstairs. The scene was one of merriment. Empty bottles littered the table. Marcus's face was flushed, but his eyes were clear and sharp, fixed on me as I stumbled into the room. Marcus! I practically shouted, my voice raw. What have you done to me? Why is it that when you drink, I vomit blood? The room fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Marcus wore an expression of innocent bewilderment. Miss Alara, what does my drinking have to do with you being unwell? You've been unwell all evening. Lila stepped between us, her hands on her hips. Alara, can't you just let me be happy? I only took one old chest from you and you have to disgust me like this? You were the one who refused to marry him. Why are you trying to sabotage it now? I'll tell you it's useless. He's already submitted the marriage application. You've missed your chance. Alara, stop making trouble, my father said coldly. If you're not feeling well, go to the hospital. Don't you dare slander Colonel Croft. Their dismissal was absolute. They were a united front and I was the hysterical, jealous outsider. Marcus's eyes met mine over Lila's shoulder. They were filled with open provocation. He deliberately lifted his glass and downed another shot of the clear, potent liquor. The moment it hit his throat, my stomach erupted in fire. The pain was so intense it twisted my features into a grimace. He saw it, and the corner of his mouth quirked upwards in a mocking smirk. He was doing it on purpose. He was showing me his power, demonstrating my utter helplessness. Summoning the last of my strength, fueled by a pure, undiluted rage, I lunged forward and shoved the heavy dining table. Plates, glasses, and bottles crashed to the floor in a cacophony of shattering porcelain and splashing alcohol. Alara, what are you doing? My father roared. I had no breath to answer. Another wave of pain, sharper than before, tore through my gut. I doubled over and vomited blood onto the ruined carpet, the red stark against the faded pattern. I couldn't stop. The world began to gray at the edges as I collapsed into the mess, the sound of their shocked voices fading into nothingness. I awoke in the deep silence of night, lying in my own bed. They hadn't even taken me to a hospital. My father and Clara, afraid I would bring bad luck to the wedding, had simply cleaned me up and dumped me in my room to either recover or die. The metallic taste of blood still coated my tongue, and a profound weakness held my body captive. I was lying there staring at the ceiling when I heard it. A low murmur from the room next to mine, Lila's room. I held my breath, pressing my ear against the cold wall. Starting to notice. It was Marcus's voice, low and urgent. I need to speed things up. The transfer must be complete before I ship out for the new assignment. Transfer. The word sent a jolt through me. So he admitted it. Don't worry, another voice replied, and my blood ran cold. Who's my father? Even if she notices, it's useless. It's only a matter of time now. She still thinks you're the one transferring the illness to her. The revelation was a physical blow. My father knew. He knew everything. He wasn't a duped bystander. He was an active participant in my destruction. My own flesh and blood. I listened, my heart hammering against my ribs, as they laid out the truth I had been too blind to see. Marcus wasn't the source of the power. It was Lila. She was the one who could transfer pain and injury. My father had taught her a secret technique, passed down in his family. The reason Marcus had targeted me specifically in the first life, and why the connection persisted now, was because I was the intended vessel. Lila's ability required a focus, a recipient, and I had been chosen. The red string was a medium, but it wasn't the source. It was a tether Lila had created, linking my life force to Marcus's suffering. And the most crucial detail, the one that sparked a desperate hope in my chest, was this: distance weakened the effect. Even if she goes to the ends of the earth, the transfer is inevitable, my father said, his voice grim. The only difference will be how fast it happens. Leave. The thought was a scream in my mind. I have to leave now. The moment their conversation ended and I heard the doors close, I forced my aching body into action. Moving as quietly as I could in the moonlit room, I began to pack a small bag with essentials. My passport, what little money I had of my own, a change of clothes. I had to get to Zachary. I had to leave for the Northwest immediately. I opened the rosewood chest which had been returned to my room after the dinner disaster. At the very bottom, tucked beneath a false panel I had discovered as a child, was a small leather-bound album. I pulled it out. On the first page was a photograph of my mother holding me as a baby. She was smiling, but her eyes, so much like mine, held a deep, profound sadness. An uncanny resemblance I had never fully appreciated before. Had she known? Had she suspected what my father was capable of? Alara? You're awake? Feeling better? Lila's voice came from right outside my door, sweet and cloying. I froze, not making a sound. The doorknob rattled. Is she still asleep? It was my father now, his voice a low grumble. She won't run, right? She probably didn't hear anything. Forget it, Lila replied. I won't go to your place for a few days. I'll keep an eye on her until the transfer is done. I heard every word clearly, my fate being decided in the hallway. Staring at my mother's photograph, at the sorrow in her eyes, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The method, the motive, the collaborators. I finally understood the machinery of my own destruction. A few days later, the marriage approval came through. The house was filled with a tense, celebratory air. I played my part, the resigned, supportive sister. Sister, I said to Lila, my voice carefully modulated. The other day I was rude. This new suitcase, I gestured to a cheap new case I had bought, is for you. And here. I handed her 2 small identical jade pendants I had purchased with the last of my personal funds. One for you, one for Colonel Croft. A wedding gift. Lila looked genuinely surprised, then pleased. My father beamed, praising my newfound generosity. Then his eyes narrowed as he noticed I was leaning heavily on a crutch. Alara, what happened to you? I waved him off. It's nothing. My right leg just suddenly went weak these past few days. It'll probably be fine in a few more. I let a slight tremor enter my voice. Lila and my father exchanged a swift, significant glance. The vultures were circling. Oh dear, that's inconvenient, Lila said, her voice dripping with false concern. Marcus has been feeling much better lately and doesn't need his wheelchair anymore. Why don't we give it to my sister? It's the least we can do. Before I could utter a word of refusal, they were ushering me into the hated wheelchair. The whole family gathered, praising how perfect it was, how thoughtful the gesture. The cold leather of the seat felt like a prison. I had barely settled in when a young, flustered soldier burst into the house. I'm here to take Colonel Croft's wheelchair. It's needed for inventory. Lila's expression soured instantly. She drew herself up, adopting the haughty air of a military wife. How dare you? My husband can walk just fine now. Why are you here to take his things? Are you cursing him? The soldier broke into a cold sweat. Ma'am, it's Colonel Croft. He collapsed during his speech at headquarters. He can't stand. The news sent a shockwave through the room. Marcus, it turned out, had been scheduled to give a speech about his heroic perseverance. He had deliberately left the wheelchair behind to present an image of full recovery. But less than 10 minutes into his address, his legs had given way, and he had collapsed on the stage, like a pile of mud. Panic ensued. Lila urgently gestured for me to get out of the wheelchair, then hurriedly pushed it out the door herself to go to her fallen fiancé. My father, Clara, and I followed close behind to the military hospital. When we arrived, the scene was one of controlled chaos. A doctor was delivering a critical update, his face grave. The patient is in serious danger. The trauma to his spine is acute. If we don't operate immediately, he will be permanently paralyzed. But right now our hospital is out of anesthesia. The decision is yours. Lila's eyes immediately found me in the crowd. It was as if she had spotted a lifeline. Do it, she said, her voice shrill. Operate without anesthesia. The doctor stared at her in disbelief. Madam, the pain would be unimaginable. Just do it, she insisted. Sure enough, my presence as his painkiller gave her the courage to condemn him to torture. But I was ready. As the order was given, I focused every ounce of my will, not on blocking the pain but on redirecting it. Can you affect him? Zachary's words were my guide. The next second, a blood-curdling, piercing scream came from the operating room, followed by frantic shouts. Not good. The patient has passed out from the pain. Lila spun towards me, her face a mask of stunned fury. Alara, what did you do? Why are you fine? I looked up from the book I had pretended to be reading, my expression one of calm indifference. This is a strange question, Lila. You told them to operate on your husband without anesthesia, and now he's in danger. Why are you asking me? I'm not the doctor. My reasonable tone and her irrational accusation drew curious and disapproving glances from the medical staff and other visitors. She stammered, nearly blurting out the truth but choking on it at the last moment. Marcus's surgery was a brush with death, but he survived. The doctor emerged, looking exhausted. The patient's life is no longer in danger, but he will need extensive care. He will be incontinent initially. A family member needs to learn basic nursing from me. Let Alara do it, Lila said without a moment's hesitation. She's the older sister. It's only right. Just like in my last life, the dirty, exhausting work was shoved onto me. Should an older sister be the one to clean up after her brother-in-law? I asked pointedly. The doctor, uncomfortable, interjected. If the patient's wife is here, we recommend she be the one to provide care. But my father spoke over him. Alara, you should go listen to. Don't let your sister get too tired. I was frozen, trapped by their audacity. Then he added the words that sealed my understanding of his complicity. This is tied to you anyway. I stood there, stunned as the last of my familial illusions crumbled to dust. My father knew the truth. My stepmother was surely involved. From beginning to end, I had been the mark, the sacrifice in their grisly plan. My marriage, my suffering, my death. It had all been orchestrated by them. Alara, here you are. I've been looking for you. Zachary's voice was a welcome anchor in the storm. He was holding a file folder. Get ready. You're leaving for the Northwest in 3 days. My father was startled. What? That soon? The assignments are fixed for later in the month. Why is hers so rushed? He tried to ask more, but I feigned a wave of weakness, clutching my crutch. Father, I'm not feeling well. Seeing my pallor and not wanting a scene, he relented. Do you want to rest in the ward? No, I'll just go home. I can use the time to pack. Acting frail, I let Zachary support me out of the room. But the moment we were outside and around the corner, I slipped away from his arm. What are you doing? He asked, caught off guard. I have to hear what they say, I whispered, and I circled back, pressing myself against the wall near the open door to Marcus's room. Zachary, understanding, followed silently. Sure enough, the moment I was gone, my father hurried to share the news with Lila. Dad, Lila was saying, her voice confused and anxious. My sister had another attack, but Marcus still hasn't woken up. Didn't you say that after the pain transfer the person would be like new? Then why hasn't Marcus woken yet? Maybe after so many years I'm misremembering some details, my father replied, his voice frustrated. In any case, you and Marcus only have a few days left with her here. Make the most of them. Zachary, listening beside me, was visibly shaken. Alara, he whispered, what on earth is going on? I looked at him, my eyes hard. It's time I showed you the rest of my mother's secrets. We didn't go home. Instead, I led Zachary to a small, discreet cafe far from the hospital and our neighborhood. The air was thick with the smell of cheap coffee and cigarette smoke, providing the anonymity we desperately needed. Before she died, my mother suspected something, I began, my voice low. She didn't trust my father. She hid a journal, letters, in a false compartment at the bottom of the rosewood chest. She knew about his family's proclivities. I took out the small leather-bound journal and a bundle of yellowed letters I had retrieved before gifting the chest to Lila. I slid them across the sticky table to Zachary. He leafed through them slowly, his calm, bureaucratic expression shifting as he read. His eyes widened in shock, then disgust, and his mouth fell slightly open. My mother's elegant script detailed my father's growing obsession with his family's legacy, a dark folklore about transferring misfortune onto others. She wrote of his sudden interest in her health, his questions about pain, his possession of strange woven cords. She feared for me. In her final letter, she was certain her lingering illness was not natural. "This is real?" Zachary finally asked, his voice hushed with horror. "Whether the magic is real or not, their belief in it is," I said quietly. "And my mother was killed because of it. 30 years ago my father, deep in debt, married into my mother's family for her money. I was born. But he grew to resent her, to resent the wealth that had saved him. He fell gravely ill, and that was when he began to despise her. The wealth and glory became a burden. His birth family had once dabbled in the occult, and he became obsessed with a secret technique he believed could transfer his own pain and illness to those around him." I pointed to a photograph in the journal, a picture of my mother, a faint, sad smile on her face, a simple red string bracelet visible on her wrist. Then I raised my own wrist where Lila's fake bracelet still sat. "The medium for the transfer is an object the victim wears often, something personal that can create a sympathetic link. This," I said, tapping the red string, "is the medium they use for the transfer. The one I'm wearing was put on me by Lila, but it's something that belonged to Marcus. It forges the connection." "Then why are you still wearing it?" Zachary reached out, his fingers poised to snap it off. "Don't," I said, pulling my hand back. "It's a fake." "A fake?" he repeated, confused. "Then where is the real one?" A grim smile touched my lips. "When I gave Lila the jade pendants as a wedding gift, I didn't give her two. I gave her one. A single pendant, carved with a symbol I found in my mother's journal, a symbol for binding. I told her it was for eternal union. She was so thrilled she didn't question it. She put it on Marcus while he was still unconscious in the hospital. The real red string, the one that had been in his possession, is woven into the cord of that pendant. He is now wearing the primary medium directly linked to her. I've redirected their own weapon. The plan was a desperate gamble, based on my mother's notes about the transfer requiring a focus on the recipient. I had switched the focus back to the source, to Lila herself. As if on cue, a commotion erupted from the direction of the hospital, visible through the cafe window. We saw Lila, my father, and Clara being hurriedly escorted out, their faces pale. We slipped out of the cafe and moved closer, blending into a small crowd of onlookers. Marcus had been awake for less than half a minute when Lila suddenly collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. She was clutching her abdomen, her screams echoing in the courtyard. "What's wrong with you?" my father demanded, his face a mask of panic. "I don't know, Dad. It hurts. It hurts so much," she wailed. "Could it be your appendicitis acting up again?" Clara asked, wringing her hands. Lila nodded, then shook her head, too consumed by pain to speak coherently. My father ran, searching for medical staff for painkillers. But painkillers were a scarce resource, rationed for military use. They were out of luck. Lila was subjected to a battery of tests, but the doctors found nothing conclusive. "There's nothing seriously wrong with you," a frustrated doctor finally told her, fed up with the hysterical family. Lila, through her pain, seemed to realize the truth. She grabbed my father's arm, whispering something frantic to him. But my father immediately shot her down. "This is your appendicitis," he barked, a desperate, wild look in his eyes. "I saw your sister doubled over in pain. Stop imagining things. And besides, she's still wearing the red string on her wrist. If she felt something was wrong, she'd have taken it off by now." He was clinging to the original plan, refusing to see that the trap had been sprung. The family that should have returned home that day ended up staying in the hospital for 2 more days, tending to a perfectly healthy Lila who was screaming in phantom pain. During those 2 days while they were distracted, I worked with Zachary. Using the maps and instructions hidden in my mother's journal, we located her true legacy. Not just her secrets but her wealth. She had never trusted my father, and in that era she could not openly use her fortune. She had buried it. In the overgrown garden of our house, under the cover of darkness, Zachary and I dug. Our shovels hit wood not 2 feet down. We unearthed two large metal-reinforced chests. When we pried them open, the moonlight glinted off gold bars, stacks of foreign currency, and velvet bags filled with my maternal grandmother's antique jewelry. Zachary, who had surely seen many things in his line of work, was stunned into silence. He stared at the treasure, then at me. "You're really going to donate this to the state?" he finally whispered. "Of course," I said without hesitation. "You already pay me a generous salary through the project. What do I need this for? I can't spend it, I can't move it, and leaving it here would only let it fall into my father's hands. This can fund a laboratory research. It can do some real good." Zachary's eyes, full of a new, profound respect, met mine in the dim light. "Do you have a plan for this house?" he asked. "I do," I said, a steely resolve in my voice. "The night before I depart, we will settle everything." The night before my departure for the Northwest, my father, true to his word, insisted on a grand farewell dinner. The irony was thick enough to choke on. The house was filled with the smell of roasting meat and the cloying scent of Claire's perfume. "My eldest daughter is going to support the Northwest," my father announced, raising a glass. His voice was a little too loud, his smile a little too forced. "My second daughter is getting married. Soon it will be just the two of us old folks in this big house. We can't just have a simple meal." Lila, though still pale and weak from her hospital ordeal, raised her glass. "Oh, Dad, don't talk like that. If you ever miss me and Marcus, we can visit any time." She glanced at Marcus, who sat in a new, sleek wheelchair, his expression unreadable. My stepmother and Marcus turned their eyes to me, their gazes heavy with expectation. I merely tapped my glass to the table, the crystal giving a dull clink, and set it down without drinking. "Father," I said, my voice cutting through the false cheer. "There's something I need to make clear. You probably won't be able to keep living in this house." The table went silent. My father's smile vanished. "What do you mean by that?" "This property is part of my mother's family estate," I stated calmly. "After I leave, I've legally rented it out as a guest house for party officials. The new tenants will be moving in first thing tomorrow morning to prepare the place." His face contorted with rage. "You made such a big decision without even discussing it with me? I am your father. This house." I curled my lips into a cold half-smile. Why would I need to consult someone named Vance about a property belonging to my mother's family, the Newmans? "Elara, you are my daughter," he spluttered, his composure shattering. "Don't think going to the countryside is some glorious thing. When you get bullied out there, who will you come running to? You'll need me to stand up for you." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Stand up for me? When have you ever done that? Was it when you tried to make me a maid, or when you volunteered me to clean my brother-in-law's filth?" My gaze swept over Lila, Clara, and Marcus. "As for whether I'll come back, don't worry. Even if I die out there, my bones will rot on the Gobi Desert. I would never set foot in this house again." "You unfilial daughter. Ungrateful wretch." My father's whole body trembled, his face a mottled purple. He slammed his hands on the table, making the dishes rattle. And then it happened. An indescribably foul stench suddenly spread across the dinner table. A dark yellow liquid began to seep through the fabric of Marcus's trousers, dripping onto the floor beneath his wheelchair. He had lost control of his bladder. A moment of horrified silence was broken as Lila noticed. With a cry of embarrassment, she rushed to wheel him away. As soon as Marcus left the room, my father fixed his eyes on me, watching me intently as if waiting for a reaction. I found it so utterly ridiculous I couldn't help but laugh. "Father," I said, my voice dripping with scorn. "Are you waiting for me? Waiting for me to writhe on the floor in pain like Lila? Or to humiliate myself in public like Colonel Croft?" His pupils contracted to pinpricks. "Elara, what nonsense are you spouting?" he roared, slamming the table again to cover his panic. But an even more embarrassing thing happened. A similar dark stain began to spread across my father's own trousers. And then, beside him, Clara let out a small, shocked gasp as she, too, lost control, clamping her legs together tightly as the stench in the room intensified. "Dad! Mom!" Lila's shrill scream came from the doorway. She had returned just in time to witness her parents' simultaneous, shameful humiliation. "Phew! Freaks! I can't live like this." She then spun on me, her finger shaking as she pointed. "Dad, I told you she already figured it out. What did you do to us?" My father, stinking and enraged, demanded, "What did you do?" I stretched lazily as if bored by the entire spectacle. "Oh, nothing much. I just let you all share a taste of Colonel Croft's suffering. After all, he's your son-in-law. Me as a Newman shouldn't be contaminated by your family's conditions." "That's impossible," Lila shrieked. "You're still wearing the red string. How could it have transferred to us?" "Oh, you mean this?" I said slowly, theatrically. I untied the fake red string from my wrist and with a flick of my fingers, tossed it straight into the roaring fireplace. A wisp of greenish smoke rose as the synthetic fibers crumbled into ash. The three of them, my father, Clara, Lila, froze, their faces a tableau of stunned disbelief. For a fleeting second I thought maybe, just maybe, the sheer magnitude of their defeat would bring some shred of remorse. Instead, my father's eyes hardened into pure, unadulterated hatred. "Daughter," he said, his voice a low, deadly growl. "Put the real one back on and I will spare your life." I laughed, the sound hollow in the tense room. "And what makes you think you have the right to negotiate with me?" His transformation was instantaneous. The civilized facade vaporized, revealing the brutal man my mother had feared. He grabbed a heavy steak knife from the table and lunged at me. I dodged, knocking over a wine glass. The red liquid splashed across the white tablecloth like blood. "Originally this was meant to be your send-off drink," he snarled, slashing at me again. "To use your life to honor Marcus. Didn't expect your wings to grow strong enough to blind me first. Fine, you've got guts. Either you help me restore it or you're not leaving this house alive today." Clara and Lila, their own shame forgotten in the face of this new violence, closed in, surrounding me. They were insane, all of them. They truly meant to kill me then and there. But before they could move, all three of them suddenly buckled, crying out as they dropped to their knees. From the next room we heard Marcus's agonized scream, a raw sound of pure pain, and immediately my father, Clara, and Lila echoed it with muffled groans of their own. The shared connection was now a shared curse, and Marcus was apparently in a world of hurt. I didn't wait. I seized the chance, bolting into my bedroom and slamming the door shut, turning the key in the lock. "Say it now," my father roared from the other side, pounding on the solid wood with his fists. Clara and Lila joined in, their fists and voices a frantic cacophony. "Elara, if I can't live well, neither can you," Lila shouted. "Fine," my father yelled. "Then we'll take good care of Marcus. The three of us won't die, but you're going to die today. If you don't come out, we'll burn you alive. Once you're dead and burned to ash, let's see who will recognize that worthless lease of yours. That whore of a mother of yours must have hidden more gold. Once you're gone, I'll have all the time in the world to find it, even if I have to dig 3 feet under." "Yes, burn her," Lila screamed, her voice hysterical. "Once she's dead, maybe this cursed effect will stop. Elara, I'll ask you one last time. Will you tell us or not?" My father's voice was thick with fury. He didn't know that by then I had already slipped out the window where Zachary was waiting in the shadows, helping me down. We had barely gotten across the street when the old house erupted in roaring, hungry flames. My father, in his madness, had actually done it. From a safe distance we watched the inferno. I heard Lila's panicked cry pierce the night. "Dad, my sister's body, it's gone." "Maybe it was burned to ashes." My father's voice, grim and determined, carried on the wind. "Doesn't matter. Start looking for anything valuable." "Dad, are you sure there's something left?" Lila asked. "I saw that wretched woman bury something underground 20 years ago. Dig harder." The house was a hollow, burning shell, but my father, in a final grotesque act of greed, led his family to dig through the embers, 3 feet into the scorched earth, determined to find a treasure that was long gone. Zachary didn't wait for the ashes to cool. He arrived at the smoldering ruin of my childhood home with 2 stern-faced officers from the Public Security Bureau. The scene was one of surreal horror. My father, Clara, and Lila, their faces and clothes smudged with soot, were desperately digging in the hot earth, while Marcus sat in his wheelchair a safe distance away, watching with a detached, cold expression. My father, ever the opportunist, immediately launched into his prepared story the moment he saw the authorities. He dropped to his knees in the ash, the picture of a grieving patriarch. "Officers, it's terrible. Yesterday my eldest daughter went mad for some reason and set fire to the house," he wailed, forcing tears to his eyes. "That's right. Lila chimed in, her voice trembling with practiced hysteria. My sister was jealous that I was marrying Colonel Croft. She tried to kill me, but ended up setting herself on fire and burning down the house instead. Marcus, from his wheelchair, gave a slow, unenthusiastic nod, corroborating their lie. Zachary didn't react. He simply gave a thin, cold smile and turned to the senior officer. Comrade, I came looking for Miss Ilara Vance yesterday evening. I witnessed these three individuals, he pointed at my father, Clara, and Lila, inside the house pouring gasoline and setting the fire themselves. My father's eyes widened in theatrical shock and fury. How dare you slander me, he roared, lurching to his feet and making as if to strike Zachary. Zachary didn't even flinch. Alistair Vance, your job at the Transport Ministry is vehicle maintenance. Obtaining gasoline is easy for you. I have a statement that you obtained 3 full barrels yesterday. You don't own a car. What did you need it for? My father froze, his raised fist hanging in the air. The color drained from his face. He lowered his hand and his voice, taking a step closer to Zachary. Secretary Evans, there's something buried on this property. Something valuable. Can we talk privately? Zachary's smile vanished entirely, replaced by a look of utter contempt. Talk privately? I have a legally binding 20-year lease for this house and land, signed by its rightful owner, Ilara Newman. You have burned down my property. The question is not about treasure, but how you plan to compensate the state for this destruction. The blow landed with the force of a physical strike. My father staggered back. He had never imagined that the tenant I had found was Zachary himself, a government official with the power and will to destroy him. At that moment, Marcus, seeing his father-in-law crumbling, tried to interject. Secretary Evans, surely there's been a misunderstanding. My father-in-law is a grieving man. But Zachary coldly produced a sealed letter from his inside pocket and handed it to Marcus. This arrived from headquarters this morning, Colonel. It might clarify the situation. Marcus opened it. His face, previously a mask of pained dignity, went blank, then ashen. Curious, Lila snatched the paper from his limp hand and read it aloud, her voice rising with each word. Assessment. Comrade Marcus Croft, 4th degree or higher disability. Recommendation. Retirement and transfer to civilian work. It was over. The army was cutting him loose. His value, the very thing that had made him a prize to my family, was gone. His composure, the last vestige of his power, collapsed utterly. He stared into the middle distance, a broken man. With witnesses, evidence, and a clear motive, Zachary ensured that justice was swift. Aside from Marcus, who was now a retired civilian, my father, Lila, and Clara were arrested on the spot for arson, attempted murder, and fraud. They were dragged away, screaming and crying, their lies echoing uselessly in the morning air. But the family that had betrayed together did not stick together. In a desperate bid for leniency, Lila and her mother turned on my father with vicious speed. They shoved all the blame onto him, even claiming my death was his doing alone, that he had killed me for the inheritance he believed was buried. Then, in a final act of betrayal that sealed all their fates, Lila revealed the biggest secret of all to the interrogators, a secret that was quickly relayed to Zachary. I loved Marcus, she confessed. My father said he had a way for us to be together. He tampered with Marcus's car so he'd get injured. Later, my father taught me how to transfer pain. It was all him. All of it. When Marcus learned that the car accident that had made him a crippled hero had been a deliberate act of sabotage by the woman he married and the father-in-law he tolerated, his passive brokenness transformed into active, seething hatred. The trials were swift. My father, as the mastermind, received a 40-year sentence. At 55 years old, it was a death sentence. And during those long years in a hard labor camp, he would continue to bear the phantom pain of Marcus's injuries, a constant gnawing reminder of his own monstrous choices. Lila and Clara, having turned state's evidence, received lighter sentences. They were released after 2 years, believing they had escaped the worst. Lila, in her profound foolishness, actually believed Marcus had waited for her. She went to the cramped, state-assigned apartment he now lived in, dreaming of picking up the pieces of their life together. On her first day back, he beat her. So it was you all along, he snarled, his fist connecting with her face. I thought you saved me from that wreck. I thought you were my angel. But you were trying to kill me. You made me a cripple. I'm not divorcing you, he hissed, standing over her cowering form. I'll cling to you for the rest of my life. And this transfer. This curse hasn't stopped, has it? Every time I hurt myself from now on, the three of you can suffer together. And he did. Marcus's pain transfer, now a tangled web connecting him to Lila, Clara, and my imprisoned father, became his weapon. He would go out of his way to inflict pain on himself, slamming his hand in a door, tripping and twisting an ankle, drinking himself sick, because he knew the agony would be shared threefold. Their lives became a hell of his making, a perpetual cycle of shared suffering. As for me, Alara Vance was officially declared dead, consumed in the fire. I was a ghost, a closed case. But I was freer than I had ever been. I changed my name. Alara Vance was ash in memory. I became Alara Newman, reclaiming my mother's maiden name, a final, definitive break from the House of Vance. I spent the next 20 years working at a secret research base in the Northwest, just as I had planned. The vast, stark beauty of the Gobi Desert was a balm to my soul. The inheritance my mother had left, not just the gold but her spirit of resilience, was put to good use. Donated to the state, it funded the very laboratory where I worked. I poured my sweat and dedication into my projects, my linguistic skills and education, finding purpose in service to my country. The silent, monumental work of science became my family, my children, filling my life with a purpose I had never known. In the hum of machinery and the pursuit of knowledge, I found my own worth. I never married. I never had children. The thought of such intimacy was too tangled with the memories of betrayal and pain. My colleagues became my friends, my work my passion. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was a life I had chosen for myself. At 50, after decades of intense, celebrated work, the organization granted me a quiet, honorable early retirement, along with a medal that I kept in a small box, a private testament to a life lived well. I returned to my long-lost hometown, not with trepidation, but with a sense of peaceful closure. Zachary, now a senior official himself, was there to welcome me. His hair was streaked with gray, but his eyes were the same, kind and sharp. He drove me through the changed city, finally stopping at the sight of the old house. I caught my breath. In its place stood a brand new modern 2-story building, clean and simple. Back then you rented it to us for 20 years, Zachary said, a small smile playing on his lips. The lease has long since expired. It's time to return it to you. He handed me a set of keys. I took them, the metal cool in my palm. My heart swelled with an emotion too complex for words. Grief, triumph, sadness and peace, all woven together. This was not my father's house. It was mine. Built on the ashes of the old, paid for with the currency of my own choices and my mother's legacy. My retirement was peaceful and calm. I worked part-time as an honorary professor at the university, occasionally mentoring bright-eyed students, but most of my time was spent living quietly in that small new building. I tended a small garden, read books, and enjoyed the simple, profound luxury of a life without fear. One afternoon, after I had attended a seminar at the university, Zachary drove me home. As we approached my street, a woman suddenly darted into the road directly in front of our car. Zachary slammed on the brakes. We lurched forward, my seatbelt catching me. The woman stumbled back, dropping a plastic lunch container. She looked terrified. Security guards from a nearby government compound, where Zachary worked, rushed over to drag her away from the car. "So sorry, Secretary Evans," one of them said, his face apologetic. He turned to the woman and slapped her hard across the face. "Stupid woman. That's the leader's car. Watch where you're going." Through the car window I saw her clearly. It was Lila. But she looked a decade older than her years. Her hair was lank and gray, her face lined and bruised. She walked with a pronounced limp. The security guard who had hit her was Marcus. He seemed energetic, but the proud military bearing was gone, replaced by the coarse aggression of a petty tyrant. "Are you blind?" he barked at her. "Didn't you see this was an official car? What if you damaged it?" Lila trembled, a cowed, broken animal. She immediately dropped to her knees on the pavement. "I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry," she said, bowing her head repeatedly against the concrete. "Please forgive me. If you make me lose this job," Marcus snarled, "you and your unlucky mother can get out of my house and starve." Zachary, his face a mask of disgust, waved a hand at the guards. It's fine. Just move her along. He drove away slowly. In the rearview mirror, I saw Marcus kick at Lila as she struggled to get up, his coarse voice carrying through the closed window. Useless bitch. Zachary glanced at me. Curious about how the Vance family is doing now? He asked softly. I shook my head, turning my gaze from the mirror to look ahead at the tree-lined street leading to my home. No, I said, and I meant it. My ties with the Vance family ended in that fire. I freed myself from the past. I broke those chains. The rest of my life belonged to my rebirth. It was a life I had built with my own two hands, a life I had fought for, a life I had earned. And as I watched the sun set over the rooftops of my quiet neighborhood, I knew with a deep and unshakable certainty that it was good. The end.
George, I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want to hear first? I put down my paintbrush and looked at my friend Frank. He stood at the studio door with a mysterious air, his face a mix of nervousness and excitement. Let's start with the bad news. After all, I've gotten used to it these past 3 years. Your painting, Eternity, just sold for a sky-high price. Over $6 million. I frowned. How is that bad news? Frank chuckled. Because it's actually part of the good news. The bad news is, buddy, you might need to see a psychiatrist. What do you mean? A woman who looks exactly like Mary showed up at your art exhibition. I almost thought I was seeing a ghost. The paintbrush slipped from my hand and fell to the floor, splattering paint across the unfinished canvas. Mary, my late wife, died 3 years ago after accidentally falling off a cliff. I watched with my own eyes as her body was pulled from the water. In that moment, my world completely collapsed. Stop joking around, Frank. Why would I lie to you? She even left this. Frank handed me a note, with an address and a time written on it. My hand trembled slightly. The handwriting was exactly the same as Mary's. That night, I waited until midnight at the designated cafe. Just as I was about to leave, a familiar figure appeared at the door. Mary? No, it couldn't be her. But every gesture of that woman, from the tips of her hair to her fingertips, was a shadow of Mary. George, it's been a long time. She sat across from me, and the familiar voice nearly made my heart stop. Who are you? I struggled to remain calm. I'm Mary, your wife. She smiled and reached out her hand. There was a scar on her palm, the mark Mary got when she accidentally cut herself on glass at 15. Impossible. Mary is already dead. She laughed softly. That was just an accident. I fell off the cliff and was saved by a reclusive old doctor. I lost my memory from the injuries and only recently remembered everything. As she spoke, tears began to fall with an expression I knew all too well, the look Mary wore whenever she felt wronged. I know it's hard to believe, but I really am Mary. I couldn't believe my eyes. The shade of lipstick Mary loved most, the faint little mole beneath her left ear, the unconscious habit of rubbing her ring while speaking. Everything was so familiar. Are you really Mary? She nodded and took a small box out of her bag. This is the proof. Inside the box was the first piece of jewelry Mary ever designed. A sapphire ring, the only one of its kind, never mass-produced. I brought it with me that day because I wanted to surprise you. I suddenly stood up and pulled her into my arms. 3 years of longing surged over me like a tide. I held her tightly, afraid that if I let go, she would disappear again. On the way home, she told me about her experiences over the past 3 years. She was rescued by an old doctor in the mountains, lost her memory due to a severe head injury, and lived in a remote mountain village for more than 2 years. It wasn't until she happened to see a poster for my art exhibition that her memory gradually returned. The next day, I took her to see Frank. Oh my God, it really is you, Mary. Frank stared in astonishment, eyes wide. Frank, it's been a long time. She greeted him with a smile, exactly as I remembered. Frank pulled me aside and whispered, Man, this is unbelievable, but I really believe it's her. Who else but Mary could call me by my childhood nickname so accurately? That was something only the two of you knew. A week later, Mary officially returned. We held a small welcome party for her. Her mother was so overwhelmed that she fainted, and when she woke up, she clung to her daughter and refused to let go. But that night, I noticed the first sign that something was off. Mary never ate mangoes because she was severely allergic. Yet the returned Mary absent-mindedly tasted a mango dessert and was perfectly fine. Aren't you allergic to mangoes? I asked. She paused for a moment, then quickly laughed and said, Oh, that old Chinese doctor cured my allergy. He's really amazing. I nodded, but in my heart, I marked the first question mark. Is this really my wife? A month passed quickly, and Mary blended perfectly into our lives. She knew the location of every item in the house, remembered our shared memories, and could even accurately name friends we hadn't contacted in years. But those subtle feelings of discord kept growing. For example, the real Mary liked to listen to classical music, especially Debussy, while designing jewelry. But she would always unconsciously hum along to pop songs. Mary always habitually used her left hand to hold chopsticks, even though she knew it was wrong. She just couldn't change. But she was a standard right-handed user. The most obvious difference appeared that night when I accidentally caught her smoking in the bedroom. The real Mary hated the smell of smoke. Even when I came home from social events with a faint scent of cigarettes, she would frown. When did you start smoking? I stood at the doorway, my voice soft. She was clearly startled, hastily snuffing out the cigarette. This is a herbal cigarette for treating insomnia, prescribed by an old Chinese doctor. I nodded, not pressing further, but the doubts in my heart only grew deeper. The next day, I went to find Frank. Help me check if, in the past 3 years, plastic surgery technology has advanced enough to achieve this level. Frank's eyes widened. You mean, she's not Mary? I'm not sure, but there are always some things that don't add up. 2 days later, Frank brought news. High-end plastic surgery can make faces look similar, but it can't replicate the exact placement of scars or moles. And there's a limit to how well someone can imitate a voice. What if it was a twin? Frank shook his head. Mary is an only child. We all know that. I decided not to show my feelings for now and to keep observing. A week later, Mary's mother came to my house with astonishing news. George, Mary is going to have a baby, my mother-in-law told me excitedly. I stood there stunned. Before we got married, Mary had been diagnosed with uterine hypoplasia. The doctor had made it clear she could never get pregnant. This was our shared secret. Not even my mother-in-law knew. How do you know that? I managed to ask. Mary told me this morning. She said she already had a checkup. It's been 2 months. My mother-in-law happily grabbed my hand. It's a blessing from above. Mary survived death, and now she can bring us new life. My heart sank to the bottom. This absolutely could not be Mary. That night, I dug out the hospital's diagnosis certificate in my study, which clearly stated the condition of Mary's uterus. But when I wanted to talk to Mary about it, I found her in the bedroom, excitedly discussing the decoration of the nursery with my mother-in-law. Mary, could you come here for a moment? I called her calmly. She followed me into the study, still wearing a blissful smile on her face. Did you forget about this? I handed her the diagnosis certificate. She took it and glanced at it, her face instantly turning pale. George, I can explain. Explain what? Explain that you're not Mary at all. Mother-in-law heard the commotion and walked in. What's going on with you two? Mom, take a look at this. I handed her the proof. My mother-in-law read it, then looked at Mary in astonishment. What's going on? Mary, you can't have children. Of course she can, I sneered, because she's not Mary at all. My mother-in-law's face changed dramatically. What nonsense are you talking about? I can explain. She hurriedly grabbed my mother-in-law's hand. That old Chinese doctor not only saved my life, but also cured my uterine problem. It's a miracle, truly. My mother-in-law looked at me, then at her, hesitating. George, you're being too paranoid. My mother-in-law finally took her daughter's side. Mary has come back with great difficulty. You should cherish her, not doubt her. Yes, George, I know this is hard to accept, but miracles do happen. Tears welled up in her eyes. Haven't we always wanted a child? Now we can finally have our own baby. I looked at her face, identical to Mary's, yet I became more certain in my heart. This woman was not my wife. All right, I believe you. I smiled, deciding to go along with their story for now. Let's wait together for this miracle to happen. That night, I secretly contacted a private detective. My mother-in-law gladly accepted her daughter's explanation, even suggesting she move in with us to take care of Mary during her pregnancy. Outwardly, I agreed, but inside I grew even more wary. This was no coincidence. There had to be some kind of plot. Mom, haven't you always lived in Haicheng? Won't it be hard to get used to living here? I probed cautiously. For my grandson, I'm willing to endure any inconvenience, my mother-in-law said firmly. I noticed a fleeting unnatural expression on Mary's face. Could the truth be connected to my mother-in-law? On the third day after my mother-in-law moved in, I discovered more suspicious details. For example, the real Mary never drank coffee, but she and my mother-in-law often enjoyed it together. Also, Mary's favorite movie was Roman Holiday, but she claimed to prefer Titanic. The strangest thing is, Mary used to despise her cousin Tom when she was alive, but now he visits frequently and chats and laughs with Mary as if they're old friends. I told Frank about these discoveries. "Buddy, things are getting more and more suspicious," Frank frowned. "Are you sure you want to keep going like this? Why not just expose her directly? It's not the right time yet. I want to find out what they're really after." The private detective's investigation also made progress. The so-called old Chinese doctor who had saved Mary did not exist at all, and Mary's whereabouts over the past 3 years were completely untraceable. More importantly, the private detective uncovered a shocking fact during the investigation. Mary's cousin Tom was deeply in debt from gambling, and the painting Eternity under my name, worth over $6 million, was his only hope for quick cash. "They're after your painting," the private detective asserted, "and this fake Mary is likely a professional identity fraudster, hired to win your trust." I took a deep breath and decided to take the initiative. That afternoon, I pretended to go out, but secretly returned home and hid in the study. Sure enough, Mary and her cousin Tom were whispering to each other in the living room. "It's taking too long," Tom said irritably. "How much longer until he sells the painting?" "Don't worry," she soothed him. "I'm already pregnant, and now he completely believes I'm Mary. In a little while, I'll say I want to move to a better neighborhood for the sake of the baby, and then we'll naturally need to sell the painting to raise money." "You're really pregnant?" "That wasn't part of the plan. It was an accident, but it works to our advantage. George wants a child so badly." "Does Annie know the truth?" "She only knows we're trying to scam money, not the specific plan. But she hates George, thinks he caused her daughter's death, so she's more than happy to help." I clenched my fists. So my mother-in-law had always believed that Mary's accident was somehow my fault. In fact, we did argue over something trivial that day, and Mary stormed out in anger. I didn't try to stop her. But I never imagined it would be the last time I'd see her. "You don't actually have feelings for George, do you?" Tom suddenly asked. She was silent for a moment. "It's just part of the job. Besides, I owe you, and I won't go back on my word." "Good then. Don't forget how we're splitting the money once we get it." Their conversation confirmed my suspicions. This was all an elaborate scheme, with my eternity as the target. In the days that followed, I pretended everything was normal while secretly making preparations. I contacted the police, arranged for evidence-gathering equipment, and found the last piece Mary had left before she died, a silver necklace that had never been made public, engraved with an anniversary date only the two of us knew. 2 weeks later, my art exhibition was held as scheduled. As planned, Mary brought up the idea of moving, hinting that I could sell Eternity. I pretended to agree and said I would auction the painting on the last day of the exhibition. "This is a surprise I prepared for you," I said on the eve of the exhibition, taking out a delicate box. "To celebrate the new life we're about to begin." She opened the box in surprise, and inside was the silver necklace. "It's beautiful, thank you." She smiled as she prepared to put it on. "Wait," I stopped her. "Aren't you going to look at the engraving on the back?" She turned the necklace over, and her face suddenly went pale. "What's wrong? Don't you like it?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "No, I really like it. It's just, I'm a bit moved." She forced a smile, but didn't know how to explain that she couldn't recognize the significance of that date. "See you tomorrow. Get some good rest, and don't forget to wear this necklace." I kissed her forehead and whispered in her ear, "After all, this is your final design." Her body visibly stiffened for a moment, but she kept smiling. "Of course, I cherish it very much. Tomorrow, the truth will come to light." On the day of the exhibition, the place was packed with people. My painting, Eternity, was displayed in the most prominent spot, right next to the last batch of jewelry designs Mary had created before her death. Mary held my arm, flawlessly playing the role of my wife as always. She had even gone out of her way to wear Mary's favorite white dress and the silver necklace I had given her last night. My mother-in-law and Tom were there too. The three of them exchanged glances from time to time, clearly waiting for the perfect moment. Frank appeared as planned, pretending to be extremely interested in Eternity and asking me about the auction details. "The auction will begin promptly at 4 in the afternoon," I replied with a smile. This painting means a great deal to me, and I hope it finds someone who truly appreciates it." Mary immediately chimed in. "Yes, although it's hard to part with it, this is a necessary decision for our future." I noticed she glanced at Tom, who gave a barely perceptible nod. At 3:30 in the afternoon, the projector in the center of the exhibition hall lit up. This was the special segment I had arranged. "Ladies and gentlemen, I stood in front of eternity. Before the auction begins, I'd like to share a little story about this painting." Mary's photo appeared on the projection screen, a group picture from her last birthday party before she passed away. 3 years ago, my wife Mary died in an accident. I created this painting, Eternity, in her memory. The woman in the painting has her back to the viewer, forever gazing into the distance, symbolizing a longing I can never reach. A soft sigh rippled through the crowd. Mary stood beside me, matching my words with a sorrowful expression. However, a month ago, a miracle happened. I turned to look at Mary. My wife came back. The whole room erupted in astonishment, and many people curiously sized up, "Mary. This is my wife, Mary." I took her hand and stepped forward. "Back from the dead, it's truly the greatest blessing heaven could have given me." She smiled and nodded to everyone, while my mother-in-law and Tom stood by with smug expressions. However, my tone suddenly shifted. Amidst my joy, a question arose. "Is she really Mary?" The entire room fell silent. Mary's hand trembled slightly in my palm. So, I did some investigating. The projector switched to a set of comparison photos. On the left was the real Mary. On the right was a photo of her. They look exactly the same, don't they? But I clicked the remote, and the photo was enlarged, the details highlighted. The position of the piercing on the left ear was slightly different, the arch of the eyebrows subtly varied, and the fine lines at the corners of the eyes ran in different directions. These are details that even professional plastic surgery cannot fully replicate. Mary tried to pull her hand away, but I held on tightly. My mother-in-law and Tom also began to grow anxious, glancing toward the exit. More importantly, the real Mary has a feature that cannot be copied. I turned to Mary. "The necklace I gave you last night has a date engraved on the back. Can you tell everyone what that date is?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. "That was the due date of our first child, the one we lost." I spoke softly, my voice trembling with emotion. "Mary designed this necklace to commemorate the baby we never got to meet. The date was our secret, only Mary and I knew." The room fell utterly silent. Mary turned deathly pale, my mother-in-law's eyes widened, and Tom had already started edging toward the door. "What surprised me even more," I continued, "was that the real Mary could never get pregnant due to an underdeveloped uterus. Yet this Mary claims she's already 2 months along." I let go of her hand and took a step back. "So, who are you really?" A flicker of despair flashed in Mary's eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. "I am Mary, it's just that old Chinese doctor." "The non-existent old Chinese doctor, right?" I sneered. "Just like the non-existent amnesia, the non-existent miraculous recovery." I turned toward the projection screen. "Let's see the truth." The screen played the secretly recorded video of her conversation with Tom, their discussion on how to swindle eternity, clearly audible. "This isn't." She tried to explain, but my mother-in-law had already rushed forward. "Who are you really?" my mother-in-law screamed. "You're not my daughter?" "Auntie, stop pretending," I said calmly. "You know she's not Mary. You just wanted to get back at me, didn't you?" My mother-in-law's face turned pale. "I didn't know she was going to impersonate Mary. Tom just said he needed help to scam some money." "Police. Don't move." Several plainclothes officers emerged from the crowd, blocking Tom as he tried to escape. Amid the chaos, Mary took the opportunity to shove me aside and run toward the exit. I chased after her and caught up in the parking lot. "Tell me, who are you really?" She finally stopped, turned to face me, tears welling in her eyes. "My name is Luna. I'm an actress. Tom found me and said if I helped trick you out of a painting, he'd give me $1 million. I needed the money for my sister's medical treatment." "Why did they choose me? Why Mary?" She shook her head. "I don't know. They gave me a lot of information, photos, videos, even your chat logs. I was just following the script." The police arrived and took her away. I stood where I was, gazing at the distant sky, my heart a tumult of emotions. Back in the exhibition hall, the crowd had already dispersed, leaving only Frank and a few police officers. "It's all been cleared up," Frank walked over. Tom owed money to loan sharks and was desperate. Your mother-in-law always resented you for not saving Mary, so she helped them plan the whole thing. I walked up to Eternity, gently caressing the back of the woman in the painting. Mary, I can finally give you an answer. The police left with the evidence. Frank patted me on the shoulder. What do you plan to do next? I took a deep breath. Prepare for the final painting. What will it be called? The Pursuit, I said softly. This time, I'll paint her face, not just her back. After the case was solved, my life seemed to return to where it was 3 years ago. Eternity was temporarily held by the court as crucial evidence. Tom and Luna were arrested for fraud, and my mother-in-law was investigated as an accomplice. The prosecution wants you to testify in court, the officer called to inform me. The trial is scheduled for early next month. I agreed, though I was utterly exhausted inside. After exposing the deception, I thought I would feel the thrill of revenge, but what I felt instead was a profound emptiness. Those days spent with Mary that month had allowed me to feel a trace of warmth in life again, even if that warmth was born of lies. Frank often came to see me, worried I might fall into despair once more. I told him not to worry, that I was working on a new piece, The Pursuit. Are you really going to paint Mary's face from the front? Frank asked curiously. For the past 3 years, you've always refused to do that. It's time, I replied. We can't live in the past forever. I moved out of the apartment I had shared with Mary and returned to the old house in the suburbs, the place where the real Mary and I had first made our home. The dust-laden memories in the house brought me both pain and comfort. Mary's studio remained just as she had left it, design sketches scattered across the table, unfinished jewelry drafts pinned to the drawing board. One afternoon, while sorting through Mary's belongings, I discovered an encrypted external hard drive. After several attempts, I finally unlocked it using our wedding anniversary as the password. Inside were backups of Mary's design works, along with some personal photos and videos. One folder in particular caught my attention. Inside a folder named Plan was a series of jewelry design sketches, labeled George's Birthday Special Project. It was then I remembered that, in the months before Mary passed away, she often spoke mysteriously about giving me an unparalleled birthday surprise. Leafing through these design drafts, I couldn't help but be moved to tears. Mary had planned to design a jewelry collection inspired by my paintings over the years, with each piece corresponding to a representative work from my artistic career. The last page was a sketch of a ring, with a dark red stone set in the center, its edges adorned with tiny diamonds, closely resembling the sunrise in my early work, Dawn. This is blood amber? I examined the notes carefully, confirming the name of this rare gemstone. Mary's designs had always been bold, but blood amber is extremely rare in the Chinese market, almost impossible to acquire. How did she obtain such a material? As I continued searching, I found a series of email correspondence screenshots. Mary had actually contacted a gemstone dealer in Myanmar, commissioning the blood amber specifically for this ring. The last email showed that the gem had already been shipped, but the date was exactly 1 week before Mary's death. I immediately called Frank. Help me check if there was a package sent from Myanmar 3 years ago, addressed to Mary. 2 days later, Frank brought news. The package did exist, but since no one signed for it, it was returned. However, according to the shipping records, it was resent a month ago, this time addressed to you. What? I was completely confused. I haven't received any package. Check your old apartment? Frank suggested. Back at my old apartment, the manager told me there was indeed a package, but it had been signed for by Mary. She said it was a surprise for you, so she didn't notify you, the manager explained. This meant Luna had taken the blood amber. I rushed to the detention center and requested to see Luna. Separated by glass, she looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but still wore that face so similar to Mary's. What are you doing here? She asked coldly. A month ago, you signed for a package from Myanmar. There was a blood amber inside. I want to know where it is. She looked surprised. How did you know? Tom asked me to sign for it. He said it was some precious gem. He took it. My heart sank. Tom was deep in gambling debt. A precious blood amber would be a windfall for him. He had probably sold it long ago. That blood amber is very important to me, I said softly. It was the last gift my wife left me. Luna was silent for a moment, then suddenly said, maybe it's not that bad. Tom said the stone has flaws, its value is greatly reduced, and he hasn't found a suitable buyer yet. Hope was rekindled. If Tom hadn't sold the blood amber yet, maybe there was still a chance to get it back. Do you know where he might hide it? Luna hesitated for a moment. He has a safe deposit box in a self-storage facility on the east side of the city. After getting the address, I immediately contacted the officer in charge of the case and explained the situation. Since Tom was involved in a large sum of money, the police quickly approved the search request. "Mr. George, we've found the safe deposit box," the officer said over the phone. "Inside, we did find the blood amber you described, as well as some other evidence." A few hours later, I retrieved the blood amber at the police station. It was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Within the dark red core, wisps of mist seemed to swirl, shifting strangely under the light. This was the birthday gift Mary had so carefully chosen for me, waiting for 3 years. Back home, I carefully placed the blood amber beside the canvas of the pursuit. The painting was already more than half finished, Mary's face emerging from the blur into clarity, yet it still felt like something was missing. Watching the blood amber glimmer faintly under the light, I suddenly understood how I should complete the painting. The creation of the pursuit entered its final stage. I decided to break convention and incorporate the blood amber into the artwork. This would not only be a portrait, but a hybrid piece that fused painting with the art of jewelry. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Frank frowned. "That blood amber is priceless." "That's exactly why," I said firmly. "Mary chose it for me. She wanted to inspire an unparalleled masterpiece. I will fulfill her wish." For 2 whole weeks, I worked day and night, neglecting sleep and food. I cut the blood amber into thin slices and inlaid them at the spot of Mary's eyes on the canvas, making her gaze truly come alive. I used a special technique to blend the surrounding paint, creating a harmonious transition with the gemstone. From certain angles, the entire painting seemed to be imbued with life, and Mary's expression would shift depending on where the viewer stood. On the day I finished the piece, Frank brought news. Luna had been sentenced to 3 years in prison, but due to her good attitude in confessing, she might serve only a year and a half. Tom, involved in multiple fraud cases, was sentenced to 7 years. My mother-in-law, as an accomplice, received a suspended sentence. "The case is finally over," Frank said. "Are you planning to exhibit your painting?" "Yes. Next month there will be a solo exhibition at the National Art Museum, and The Pursuit will be the grand finale." The curator couldn't stop praising this piece, believing it represents the innovative direction of contemporary art and marks the pinnacle of my career. Indeed, this painting, which incorporates Mary's jewelry design concepts, is in some sense a creation we made together. On the eve of the exhibition, I checked the arrangement in the gallery alone one last time, making sure every piece was perfectly lit and positioned. When I reached The Pursuit, I couldn't help but stop and gaze at it. Mary's face was vividly lifelike, her eyes inlaid with blood amber gleaming under the spotlight, as if she were smiling at me. For the first time in 3 years, I faced her directly, no longer painting only her back. "Mr. George," a stranger's voice called from behind. "Sorry to disturb you, but the gallery has been cleared." He turned around to see a young woman dressed in the museum's staff uniform. "And you are?" "I'm the new curator, responsible for security in your exhibition area," she explained with a smile. "I really like your work, especially this piece, The Pursuit." "Thank you." I nodded. "I'll be leaving soon." She didn't leave, but continued to gaze at the painting. "That red gem is beautiful, almost as if it's alive." "It's blood amber," I explained, "a very rare gemstone." "I know," she said softly, "top-grade blood amber from Myanmar, containing plant fossils, extremely rare." I looked at her in surprise. "You know a lot about jewelry?" She smiled. "I study jewelry design. I'm just working part-time here." For some reason, Mary suddenly came to mind. She, too, had an almost obsessive passion for and expertise in gemstones. "If you don't mind me asking, who is the woman in this painting?" she asked. "My wife," I replied. "She passed away 3 years ago. She was a jewelry designer." "I'm very sorry," she said sincerely, then gestured toward the blood amber. "This gem must mean a great deal to you. It was the last birthday gift she chose for me before she died, but I only found it recently." She nodded thoughtfully. "Setting it into her portrait is the best way to remember her." For some reason, talking with this unfamiliar woman brought me a strange sense of calm. Perhaps it was her love for jewelry that reminded me of Mary. "Sorry, I have to continue my rounds." She glanced at her watch. "See you tomorrow, Mr. George." See you tomorrow, I replied, watching her leave. On the way home, I felt an unusual peace. The completion of The Pursuit seemed to mark the end of my search for Mary as well. Not forgetting, but remembering her forever in another way. The next day, the exhibition's opening ceremony attracted numerous figures from the art world and the media. The Pursuit undoubtedly became the center of attention, with people marveling at this innovative form of artistic expression. Amid the crowd, I noticed that curator standing aside, watching as well. Sunlight streamed through the skylight of the gallery, falling upon her, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw Mary's shadow. No, I shook my head, warning myself not to be deceived by mere resemblance. There would never be another Mary in this world, just as there would never be another unique blood amber. After the exhibition, The Pursuit was purchased by an anonymous collector for an astronomical price. I donated all the proceeds to a foundation supporting students in jewelry design, establishing a scholarship in Mary's name. Life slowly moved forward, and I began to accept new commissions and create new works. Occasionally, I would think of that curator with a unique insight into jewelry, wondering if she was still working at the art museum. Until one day, I received an email from HL. There were no words, only an image. A sketch of a ring design, the style strikingly similar to Mary's unfinished series. My heart raced as I replied immediately. Who is this? The response came quickly. Yesterday, you brushed past me by the cafe on the street corner, but you didn't recognize me. If you want to know more, wait for me at the museum entrance at noon tomorrow. Is it that librarian? How could she have a design so reminiscent of Mary's style? Filled with anxiety and anticipation, I decided to accept the invitation and find out for myself. The next day at noon, I arrived at the art museum half an hour early. The sun was shining, and small groups of visitors were coming and going from the exhibition hall, but there was no sign of the mysterious person. Just as I began to suspect this might be some kind of prank, a faint trace of perfume drifted by, a scent unfamiliar to me, yet it inexplicably reminded me of Mary. Mr. George, thank you for coming. The voice behind me made me turn around. It was the curator. Today, she wasn't wearing her uniform, but a simple white dress, completely different from Mary's style when she was alive. Did you send the email? I asked directly. She nodded. There are some things I want to tell you, but not here. Will you come with me? We walked through the small park beside the art museum and arrived at a secluded cafe. The whole time, I kept observing her. Her mannerisms, the way she walked, none of it resembled Mary. Yet her sensitivity to detail and her focused attention gave me a strange sense of familiarity. Who are you, really? The moment we sat down, I couldn't wait to ask. My name is Nicole. She looked me straight in the eye. I'm Mary's student. This answer caught me off guard. Mary had indeed taught jewelry design part-time at the Design Academy before she passed away, but she had never mentioned having any particularly close students. I took her advanced design class the year before she passed, Nicole explained. Her guidance benefited me for a lifetime. That still doesn't explain why your designs resemble her style so much, I said, half convinced. Nicole took a folder out of her bag. These are all notes from Ms. Nicole's class and her feedback on my work. You can look at the handwriting and confirm that it's really hers. I carefully examined the materials. It was indeed Mary's handwriting. There were even traces of the pale purple ink she habitually used. Before Ms. Nicole passed away, she was guiding me on my graduation project, Nicole continued. The theme was interwoven light and shadow, blending Eastern and Western aesthetic elements. She gave me a lot of valuable advice, and even showed me a sketch from a private project she was working on at the time. George's special birthday project? I blurted out. Nicole's eyes widened in surprise. You know about it? I only found out recently. I briefly explained the origin of the blood amber. I knew that blood amber would eventually find its way back to you, Nicole said with a smile. Nicole always said it was a destined gift. Is that why you contacted me? Because you saw the blood amber? Nicole was silent for a moment, as if choosing her words carefully. Not entirely. After Nicole passed away, I've been trying to carry on the design philosophy she taught me. Some time ago, I happened to see the news about your eternity being stolen, and then I saw someone impersonating Nicole. I thought I should tell you a few things. She took a letter out of her bag. This is the last letter Nicole gave me after class before she passed away. She said if her surprise plan went smoothly, I should show you this letter. If anything went wrong and she was gone, I should still make sure you see it." I took the envelope. It was indeed Mary's handwriting, and it read, "To my dearest husband." The envelope had already been opened. I didn't know what was in the letter at the time. I just kept it as Nicole instructed, Nicole explained. It wasn't until I saw the news that I opened it. "I hope you won't blame me." I carefully took out the letter paper and unfolded it to read. "Dear George, if you are reading this letter, perhaps my surprise plan has gone awry. Don't worry, it's just that the plan has changed, and the form of the gift may be different now. The blood amber I picked for you is said to be known as the Eye of Rebirth. Legend has it that looking at the world through it reveals truths that are often overlooked. I hope it can become a turning point in your artistic career, leading you to see new possibilities. All these years, your paintings have always depicted backs, as if you're afraid to face something head-on. I hope this gemstone will give you the courage to paint the front, to capture true emotions. No matter what happens, please remember, love does not disappear, it merely changes form, like this blood amber, which, after millions of years, transforms from resin into a gem, yet still shines. Forever loving you, Mary." The handwriting became a bit messy at the end, as if written in a hurry. I stroked the paper, as if I could feel Mary's emotions at that moment. "Thank you," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "This means a lot to me." "You're welcome. I'm just fulfilling Ms. Nicole's request," Nicole said with a smile. "Actually, there's one more thing I'd like to ask your help with." "What is it?" "I'd like to apply for the Mary Scholarship you established," she said, taking a design portfolio out of her bag. "This is my graduation project, combining Ms. Nicole's ideas with my own innovations." As I flipped through the portfolio, I was surprised to find that while these designs bore traces of Mary's influence, they also possessed a unique style and innovative touches. In particular, a series called Metamorphosis cleverly combined jewelry with transformable elements, allowing the pieces to change form according to the wearer's mood and occasion. "This is outstanding," I praised sincerely. "Mary would be proud of you." A hint of joy flashed in Nicole's eyes. "Really? I've always worried I couldn't live up to her expectations. You've already moved beyond the learning stage and developed your own style." That's exactly what she hoped to see. As we talked, sunlight streamed through the window and fell on Nicole. In that moment, I seemed to understand something. When Mary spoke of love changing its form, perhaps she wasn't just referring to the blood amber, but also to her passion for art and its legacy. Luna tried to impersonate Mary by mimicking her appearance, but she could never truly replicate who she was. Nicole, on the other hand, looked nothing like Mary, yet she inherited a part of her artistic vision and spirit. Perhaps this is the true gift Mary left me, not the blood amber, but a new possibility, a path out of the past. Nicole's graduation exhibition was held in a small gallery. Though the space was modest, it was exquisitely arranged. Her works were divided into 3 series, representing the past, the present, and the future, forming a complete narrative. "This is a brilliant idea," I sincerely praised. From tradition to contemporary and then to the future, it showcases the evolution and possibilities of jewelry design. Nicole smiled and nodded. This was inspired by teacher Nicole. She always says that good design should look back at history, be grounded in the present, and look forward to the future. As I walked through the exhibition hall, I noticed a special display case in the corner, containing only one piece, a seemingly simple ring with a small red gemstone set in the center. "This is..." I leaned in to read the label, which said, "In memory, dedicated to teacher Mary." "Yes, I made it from a small piece of blood amber I bought with my own savings," Nicole explained. "It can't compare to the quality of yours, but it's also from Myanmar." I examined the design of the ring closely. Clean, powerful lines, with fine silver threads encircling the blood amber, as if protecting the central gem, yet also seeming to radiate light outward. "This is very similar to Mary's final design style," I said softly, "but it also has your own unique touch. I wanted to create a piece that could both commemorate teacher Nicole and showcase my own style," Nicole explained. "The blood amber represents her influence, while the outer design is the direction of my own development." The exhibition attracted quite a few industry insiders, including some well-known figures from the jewelry design world. After viewing the exhibition, an older female designer approached Nicole and offered her an internship opportunity. I stood by, genuinely happy for Nicole. In the evening, as the exhibition was drawing to a close, Frank arrived as well. Seeing me with Nicole, he gave me a knowing smile. "New friend?" he asked me quietly. "Mary's student," I explained simply, Very talented. Frank nodded without asking further questions. After touring the exhibition, he gave high praise to Nicole's work. It blends traditional and modern elements, demonstrating both technical skill and artistic expression, quite rare. Nicole thanked him politely. This wouldn't have been possible without the guidance of teacher Nicole and teacher George. After the exhibition, the three of us went to a nearby restaurant for dinner. During the meal, Frank talked about recent trends in the art market, while Nicole shared her insights on contemporary jewelry design. The conversation was light and pleasant, and I realized it had been a long time since I had relaxed and chatted with others like this. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank received an urgent call and left early. Only Nicole and I remained in the restaurant, and the atmosphere suddenly became a bit quiet. Mr. George, Nicole hesitated for a moment before speaking. I've always had a question I wanted to ask you. What is it? After you finished the pursuit, what are you planning to create next? The question caught me off guard. To be honest, ever since the pursuit, I haven't had any new inspiration. That painting seemed to have drained all my emotions and creativity. I haven't decided yet, I answered honestly. It might take some time to find a new direction. Nicole nodded thoughtfully. Nicole once said that the hardest thing for an artist isn't creating a stunning masterpiece, but finding a way forward after reaching the peak. She really did say that, I recalled with a smile. Mary always saw further than I did. Maybe, Nicole said softly, you could try a new direction that combines your work with jewelry design? Like in The Pursuit, but taking it even further. I recalled what Mary mentioned in her letter about seeing new possibilities, and suddenly I was inspired. You mean, creating a series of works that combine painting and jewelry? Exactly. Nicole said excitedly, your paintings create emotion in two-dimensional space, while jewelry gives it tangible form in the three-dimensional world. The combination of the two would have an astonishing effect. The more we talked, the more engaged we became, even sketching a few concept designs on the restaurant's napkins. Nicole's ideas were fresh and bold, perfectly aligning with my artistic vision, yet bringing a new perspective. As we left the restaurant, Nicole suddenly said, I have to confess something. I looked at her in confusion. I reached out to you not only to deliver Nicole's letter, but also for a personal reason. I hope to learn from you, she said candidly. I want to become a designer like Nicole, someone who not only creates beautiful works but also perfectly blends art with emotion. Her sincerity moved me. You're already on that path, and you're doing very well. Then, may I consult you often? She asked a little nervously. Of course, I'd be delighted. On the way home, a series of new works already began to take shape in my mind. A cross-disciplinary art that fuses painting and jewelry, both as a tribute to Mary and as a new starting point in my artistic career. That night, I had a dream. In the dream, Mary stood in a halo of blood-red light, smiling at me and saying, See, I knew you would find a new direction. When I woke up, I got out of bed immediately and began sketching for the new series. I decided to name it Rebirth. Not only representing the ancient life forever preserved in blood amber, but also symbolizing the rebirth of my artistic career, as well as the inheritance and development of Mary's artistic vision. A week later, I submitted a new series proposal to the gallery and received an enthusiastic response. The curator even suggested holding a special exhibition themed Between Dimensions, a dialogue between painting and jewelry. For this project, I invited Nicole to join the team as a jewelry design consultant. She had just graduated from design school and was both excited and nervous about the opportunity. Am I really up to the task? She asked me in the studio. You understand Mary's design philosophy better than anyone, I assured her. That's exactly what I need. In the days that followed, we worked at a feverish pace. We created during the day and discussed at night, sometimes even working through until dawn. Nicole's ideas flowed endlessly, and I transformed those thoughts into concrete artistic expressions. In the process, I rediscovered the pure joy of creation that I hadn't felt in a long time. One late night, when we finally finished the design for our first piece, Nicole clapped her hands excitedly. This is amazing. Teacher Nicole will definitely love it. At the mention of Mary, she suddenly realized her slip and looked at me nervously. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. It's all right, I said with a smile. I think Mary really would like it. She always hoped I could step out of my comfort zone and try new ways of expressing myself. Nicole let out a sigh of relief, then hesitantly asked, Professor George, may I ask you a personal question? What is it? When you faced the woman impersonating Professor Nicole, how did you see through her? I mean, from the news reports, she seemed like an exact copy of Professor Nicole. I pondered for a moment. Superficial resemblance is easy to achieve, but a true personality cannot be duplicated. Mary's perception of art, her attitude toward life, the way she handled details, these were all unique. Just like a work of art, Nicole mused, no matter how perfect a replica is, it can never capture the soul of the original. Exactly. We worked through the night again, and finally established the overall framework for the Rebirth series. 7 pieces, each blending elements of painting and jewelry, together telling a story of loss and recovery, death and rebirth. As our collaboration deepened, my relationship with Nicole gradually shifted from teacher and student to partners, both mentor and friend. Sometimes, when the light traced the gentle contours of her focused profile, I would unconsciously think of Mary. But soon, I realized that this association wasn't due to any physical resemblance, but rather that same dedication and passion for art. George, you look much more spirited lately, Frank remarked at a gathering. It's been a while since I've seen you so full of life. Yeah, the new project has helped me rediscover the joy of creating. Nicole's a good girl, Frank said meaningfully. Talented, and she really understands you. I understood his implication, but just smiled without responding. There was indeed a special understanding between Nicole and me, but it was more rooted in our shared passion for art than anything else. At least for now. The creation of the Rebirth series took 3 months, longer than expected, but the results were stunning. Each piece was a perfect fusion of painting and jewelry art, offering both the pleasure of viewing as a flat image and the discovery of 3-dimensional effects brought by the jewelry elements from different angles. A week before the exhibition opened, I received an unexpected visitor, Luna. She had served her sentence and was released early. She looked much more haggard than the last time we met, but her eyes were clearer. I came to apologize to you in person. She stood at the studio door, her voice low, for everything I have done. I didn't respond immediately, but simply invited her in to sit down. I know that an apology can't make up for the loss, she continued, but I want you to know that I truly regret it. How is your sister's illness? I asked. She looked up in surprise. You know. I guessed. You said you needed money for a reason, and I think that must have been true. Yes, she nodded. My sister's surgery was a success, and now she's fully recovered. For the past 3 years, I've been thinking about how to make up for my mistakes. Even though I may never be able to. I was silent for a moment, then said, You know, in a way, your appearance actually helped me. What do you mean? It forced me to confront the past, to re-examine my memories with Mary, and ultimately to find a way forward. I pointed to the sketches of the Rebirth series on the wall and briefly explained this new project. Luna listened quietly, a look of genuine respect in her eyes. I'm glad you were able to find a new beginning from that nightmare, she said at last. I hope I can find my own path to rebirth as well. As she left, she handed me a small package. These are some simple pieces of jewelry I made in prison. The craftsmanship is rough, but each one represents my remorse and blessings. I hope you can accept them. Opening the package, I found several small trinkets handmade from fine wire and colorful glass beads. Though simple, it was clear the creator had poured their heart into them. Nicole happened to come into the studio at that moment. Seeing the trinkets, she asked curiously, What are these? I told her about Luna's visit. You forgave her? Nicole was a bit surprised. Not exactly forgiveness. I said thoughtfully, it's more like understanding. Everyone has their own hardships and choices. What's important is how we learn and grow from our mistakes. Nicole nodded pensively, picking up a piece of jewelry to examine it closely. The craftsmanship is rough, but the concept is ingenious. This person seems to have a talent for design. Perhaps, I said, everyone has the possibility of being reborn. On the day of the exhibition opening, numerous figures from the art and jewelry worlds gathered together. The Rebirth series received unprecedented acclaim. Critics called it a model of cross-disciplinary art, and the gallery owner was overjoyed, announcing plans for a nationwide tour. In the crowd, I saw Luna. She was dressed simply, standing quietly in a corner, admiring the exhibits. Our eyes met in the air. She nodded slightly, then walked away. Who was that? Nicole asked, standing beside me. Someone searching for rebirth, I replied. Nicole seemed to understand and asked no more. We stood side by side before the pursuit, watching the blood amber refract a strange light under the lamps, like the silent burning of life's flame. Thank you, I whispered to Nicole. Without you, this series might never have come into being. It was your philosophy that guided us, Teacher Nicole, she replied modestly. I was just fortunate enough to be the messenger. In that moment, I suddenly understood the true meaning of what Mary had written in her letter. Love has changed its form. Love exists not only in memory and longing, but also in inheritance and innovation, shining brightly in every spark of artistic creation. And I, at last, had learned how to begin anew after loss, to embrace rebirth while still searching. The success of the exhibition exceeded everyone's expectations. In just 1 month, the Rebirth series was reported on by major media outlets and even attracted the attention of the international art world. A renowned auction house extended an olive branch to me, hoping to include several pieces in their annual highlight auction. This is an unprecedented opportunity, Frank said excitedly. If the deal goes through, you'll become a top player in the contemporary art market. I wasn't particularly concerned with commercial success, but I did feel the joy of having my work widely recognized. More importantly, this series opened up a new artistic path for me, freeing me from the creative shackles of the past 3 years. Nicole benefited as well. As the project's jewelry design consultant, she received high praise from the industry. Several well-known jewelry brands reached out to her, hoping she would join their design teams. Which offer are you planning to accept? One night, as we were tidying up the studio together, I asked her. To be honest, I'm still hesitating. Nicole paused her work. These are all great opportunities, but what? But I want to keep working with you. She looked straight into my eyes. Rebirth is just the beginning, isn't it? Her candor surprised me a little. Indeed, the success of this series had opened up many new creative possibilities for us, but I wasn't sure if I should continue such a close working relationship. You should consider your own career development, I said tactfully. These opportunities are very rare for young designers. Nicole seemed to sense my hesitation and nodded gently. I understand. In the days that followed, we were both busy and rarely had the chance to talk alone. A week later, Nicole told me she had decided to accept an invitation from a French jewelry brand and would be going to Paris to work for 2 years. Congratulations, I said sincerely. It's a very good choice. Thank you, she replied with a smile, though a fleeting, elusive emotion flashed in her eyes. I think this is the best arrangement for both of us. Before Nicole left, we held a small farewell party. Frank, the curator, and a few mutual friends came. The atmosphere was warm, tinged with a hint of sadness. After a few rounds of drinks, Frank found an opportunity to pull me aside. Are you really going to just let her go like this? What do you mean? I pretended not to understand. Don't play dumb, man, Frank said bluntly. You have feelings for her. That's obvious. That's just professional rapport, I argued. Is that so? Frank looked at me meaningfully. Then why have you been so distracted ever since she decided to go to France? I was at a loss for words. In fact, these past few days I had indeed felt an inexplicable sense of loss, but I kept telling myself it was only because I had lost an excellent partner. I know what you're worried about, Frank lowered his voice. You feel like you're letting Mary down, don't you? I remained silent. He had touched upon the deepest concern in my heart. Mary has been gone for 3 years now. Frank gently patted my shoulder. She would want you to be happy. After the party ended, I walked Nicole home. The night was tranquil as water, and the city lights flowed around us. Thank you for your help and guidance these past few months. Nicole stopped at the entrance of her apartment building. This experience has meant so much to me. I should be thanking you, I said sincerely. Without you, the Rebirth series would never have been completed. We fell into silence, as if both searching for the right words to say goodbye. My flight is the morning after tomorrow, Nicole finally said. I still have some things to take care of tomorrow. So, this is probably the last time we'll see each other. 2 years will pass quickly. I tried to make my voice sound light. Paris is a beautiful city. You'll like it there. She nodded, a complex emotion flickering in her eyes. Professor George, there's something I've always wanted to tell you, but never found the right opportunity. What is it? I chose to study jewelry design because I saw Nicole's works. She took a deep breath, or more precisely, because I saw the pieces Nicole designed for you. The way she perfectly fused love and art moved me deeply. I didn't know that, I said in surprise. I've always hoped that one day I could be like Nicole, creating art filled with emotion. Nicole continued, her words coming faster, as if afraid she might lose her courage. But now I realize that what I want even more is to create for a specific person, just like Nicole created for you. I understood her implication, and my heart suddenly began to race. Nicole, please don't respond, she gently interrupted me. I just wanted you to know before I leave. No matter how you feel right now, remember that starting over is not a betrayal of the past, but a way of cherishing life. With that, she rose up on her tiptoes and softly kissed my cheek, then quickly turned and walked into the apartment building, leaving me standing alone in the night, my mind in turmoil. After returning home, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep, replaying Nicole's words and that gentle kiss over and over in my mind. Suddenly, I remembered a small box in the study, where Mary's last complete letter was kept, a letter I had found while sorting through her belongings. But at the time, overwhelmed by grief, I never had the courage to open. Now, I finally mustered the courage to walk into the study and retrieve that delicate little box from the depths of the drawer. Inside lay a pale pink letter, bearing Mary's familiar handwriting. Dearest George, by the time you read this letter, you may find yourself at a crossroads in life, hesitating between moving forward or staying where you are. My greatest wish is that you can move bravely through life, as freely as your brush glides across the canvas. Love is not a shackle, but a liberation. Memory is not a burden, but a source of strength. If one day you meet someone who can rekindle the light in your eyes, please don't hesitate because of your longing for me. True love is wishing happiness for the other, even if there is no longer a place for oneself in that happiness. Remember, the days we loved each other were complete, with no need for regrets. And now, it's time to paint a new picture, my beloved. Forever loving you. Mary. Tears blurred my vision. It was as if Mary had foreseen my current situation and had already given me her blessing. She was always like this, always able to see further and more clearly than I could. At that moment, I made up my mind. Early the next morning, I drove straight to Nicole's apartment. Professor George? Nicole opened the door in surprise, clearly not expecting me. I have something to say to you. I looked her straight in the eyes, not as your teacher, but as George. I handed her Mary's letter. Nicole read it carefully, her expression shifting from surprise to being moved, and finally, her eyes grew moist. She truly was an extraordinary woman, Nicole said softly, handing the letter back to me. Yes, she was, I nodded. That's exactly why I believe her words. Nicole, cancel your plans for Paris. Stay and continue our collaboration, will you? Nicole looked at me in shock. Are you serious? I've never been more serious, I said quietly. Rebirth is not just the name of an artwork, it's a possibility in life. Are you willing to explore that possibility with me? Her answer was a firm embrace, warm and real, like the first ray of sunlight after a long winter. In that moment, I felt as if Mary was somewhere, smiling down on us, blessing this new beginning. Life is like that blood amber, enduring countless ages of change and sedimentation, ultimately transforming into an eternal radiance. And I, at last, understood what true pursuit is, what true rebirth means. A year later, Nicole and I unveiled our second joint project, Interwoven, at the National Art Museum. This series was even bolder and more innovative than Rebirth, blending Eastern and Western aesthetics with various art forms. Critics hailed it as a significant breakthrough in contemporary art. At the opening ceremony, Nicole held my arm as we faced the media interviews and congratulations from the audience together. She wore a simple white dress, and around her neck was the Eye of Rebirth necklace we designed together. She completed the jewelry part based on my painting. Your collaboration seems even more in sync than your last project, a reporter asked with a suggestive smile. Nicole glanced at me, and we exchanged a smile. Yes, both in art and in life, we found the perfect balance. This indirect answer drew a round of good-natured laughter from the reporters present. My relationship with Nicole was no longer a secret, but we always kept a low profile, letting the public's attention remain focused on our artistic creations. After the exhibition, we drove out to a small hill in the countryside. There stood an ancient oak tree, beneath which Mary's ashes were laid to rest. This was the place we chose. Rather than a traditional cemetery, natural, peaceful, just like Mary herself. "Mary, the exhibition was a great success today," I said softly to the stone beneath the tree. "Nicole's designs were admired by everyone, just as you once predicted." Nicole crouched down and placed a bouquet of white daisies in front of the stone. "Teacher Nicole, I've been working hard to become the kind of designer you hoped I would be. I hope you can be proud of me." A gentle breeze stirred, and the oak's leaves rustled softly, as if it were Mary's reply. On the way back, Nicole suddenly said, "I've been thinking about something." "What is it?" "If that woman who pretended to be Ms. Nicole hadn't appeared, you might never have found the blood amber, never created the pursuit, and we might never have met." Her words made me fall into deep thought. Indeed, it was the series of events triggered by that deception that ultimately led to everything now. It feels as if, in the unseen, some force has been orchestrating it all. "Perhaps that's the irony of fate," I said softly. "Sometimes, the worst beginnings can lead us to the best endings." When I returned home, I received an unexpected package. Upon opening it, I found a delicate little box containing a handmade ring. Though simple, the craftsmanship had improved greatly compared to the pieces I had seen before. There was a note attached. "Mr. George, thank you for your kindness and understanding a year ago, which gave me the courage to start over. Now I have found a job at a small jewelry shop, and my life is gradually getting back on track. This ring represents my gratitude, and I wish you happiness and well-being on your new path." "Luna," I handed the ring to Nicole. After examining it carefully, she remarked, "Her skills have improved a lot. She truly is talent." "Some mistakes in life shouldn't become permanent scars," I sighed. "Everyone deserves a second chance." That night, we sat in the studio, discussing ideas for the next series. Nicole suddenly proposed a bold idea. I was thinking, maybe we could try connecting the different stages of our work to create a complete narrative. From eternity to quest, then to rebirth, and intertwined, they're actually different phases in a person's life journey. "You mean a complete story about loss, searching, rebirth, and integration," she explained excitedly, ultimately asking what is the most precious treasure in life. "Love," I finished her sentence, "no matter what form it takes." Nicole nodded, her eyes sparkling with creative fire. "We could call it the forms of love, an unprecedented artistic exploration." "Sounds like a long-term, ambitious project." "We have time," she smiled, holding my hand. "We have so much time." In that moment, I felt a powerful surge of creative inspiration, just like when I first began my artistic career years ago, filled with passion and possibility. But this time, I was not facing the blank canvas alone. 2 years later, the Forms of Love series was exhibited simultaneously in the world's 5 greatest art museums, causing an unprecedented sensation. Critics called it a milestone in contemporary art history, blending painting, sculpture, jewelry design, and other art forms to create an entirely new artistic language. The final piece of the exhibition was titled Eternal Ring, a massive circular canvas depicting every form of love in life, familial, platonic, romantic, and the love for art itself. The edge of the canvas was inlaid with gemstones of various sizes, and under certain lighting, these gems would cast light onto specific parts of the canvas, revealing another hidden layer of patterns. The centerpiece of this work is a massive blood amber. Through intricate optical design, the light it projects perfectly outlines 2 embracing figures. One is Mary, the other is Nicole, symbolizing the intersection of past and present, the fusion of memory and rebirth. On the closing day of the exhibition, in front of the Eternal Ring, I knelt on one knee and proposed to Nicole. The ring was crafted from the very blood amber Mary had once prepared for me, designed by my own hand and fashioned by the finest jeweler. "This ring carries the memories of the past and the hopes for the future," I whispered softly. "Nicole, will you be the eternal ring in my life?" Her tears sparkled under the spotlight. "I will." Amidst the cheers, I remembered what Mary once said, "Love does not disappear. It merely changes its form." Yes, love does not disappear. It exists in memories, in art, in every rebirth and new beginning. It traverses time and crosses space, like that blood amber which, after millions of years, still shines, forever retaining the original warmth and brilliance of life. This is the answer I have been searching for all along. Between loss and gain, between seeking and rebirth, love remains constant, only appearing in different forms along the journey of life. And all we need to do is bravely accept this gift, no matter how it comes to us. On the day of the wedding, the sky was a clear, washed blue. Beneath the ancient oak tree that had watched over Mary, we exchanged our vows. A gentle breeze stirred, making the leaves whisper as if blessings were drifting in from another world. No matter when or where, Nicole said softly, we'll always remember that it was she who brought us together. Yes, I squeezed her hand, and we will always cherish this gift. In the brilliant sunlight, the blood amber ring gleamed, radiant as life itself, enduring the passage of time, yet still shining bright.